Yes, I created them. I thought about them. I recorded them. I edited them. Bedtime breathers. Just a little fright before you go to sleep at night. Just to remind you that their stories contain death and horror and chills. Hi once again. I've spent quite a few days actually suffering from another bug, and here I had a fight with one of my books. Well, not really. I did it shaving. Yeah, I'm getting old. Anyway, welcome again to my channel. It's Grandma BG, and I'm about to narrate the third story in Bedtime Breathers to you today. I might even give you a bit of a surprise in reading the entire story. We'll see how it goes. I also like to leave in my bloopers, just to let you know I'm not an AI speaking to you on the telephone the way you think I might be if I am an AI voice. No, it's me. Yes. So here goes. Bedtime Breathers, story number 3. Skullduggery. Dictionary. Skullduggery. Also skullduggery. Noun. Underhanded or unscrupulous behavior. Trickery. A firm that investigates commercial skullduggery, as an example. Origin, mid-19th century, alteration of Scots Skullduggery, of unknown origin. He never accepted the fact that there was an area in Asia referred to as the killing fields. He simply did not believe that humans could be as evil as the rest of the world was painting them to be. He found it very difficult to accept the fact that there was indeed a Holocaust in Europe between 1939 and 1945, except for the indisputable actuality that he happened to have had a relative who fell within that regime during his relative's incarceration in Colditz Castle as a soldier. Yet he did not equate the evil leadership of World War II to that same evil leadership by Pol Pot, who created, led, and operated under the name of Khmer Rouge. He just could not accept it. Surely the two scourges could not have materialized within a handful of years of each other's existence to practically mirror their evil doings. That's when he started dreaming. His dream was a recurring event. He didn't understand why. He had no idea. It just happened to him almost every night. But it was not a frightening dream. In fact, quite the opposite. It boosted his morale to the point where every morning, upon waking, he felt invigorated and also extremely proud of himself. Unfortunately, he had not understood the totality of his dream. The reason for this was more than likely because it was such a positive feeling that he experienced, but also had him tremendously buoyed up, both mentally as well as spiritually. Consequently, he did not see the entirety of the dream. This did not affect his understanding of what he did see. What he definitely saw was himself as the leader of a vast army. Not as he understood he had seen either Hitler or Pol Pot, but he saw himself as the kingpin and the keystone of the structure, which would be nothing without himself being the head of the most important item in this incredible army. He saw a roadway with shining cobbles that for once were not slippery. He saw these cobbles as beautiful white cobbles, evenly set, providing almost smooth surfaces, but yet absolutely non-slip because of the characteristics of the surfaces, which had been roughened using some astonishingly new method of treatment. He was the keystone for this vast new highway, which would be responsible for allowing traffic to move at substantially increased rates, much more so than the previous road surfaces that we used throughout their prior history. He started thinking of himself as a sort of general, controlling thousands and thousands of people in this special new kind of army, having every one of his whims catered for by the plebeians, as he now started to view all other human beings, with himself becoming more of an emperor rather than a simple general. This also assisted in slightly modifying his dreams. Following a couple of months or so of this recurring dream, he started to believe what he was seeing in his dreams as factual. This led him to think that he had a destiny far superior to almost everybody else around him. He would become the leader of his community and perhaps of the society in which his community lived. He began to feel so full of his own importance that his disregard for the balance of his local fellow human beings began to become evident. Just like a ruler who did not wish to taint his physical self with the riffraff and flotsam of society. This recurring dream started to introduce little bits of detail that he had first completely missed when the dream started. Such things as the general weather, be it warm or cold, the typical kind of atmospheric environment, the type of dirt into which these cobblestones were emplaced, how they fitted together without actually touching each other. The quality of workmanship was very high. These things further enhanced his own opinion of himself and raised himself even higher on the pedestal upon which he placed himself as far as his importance to the project was concerned. The one thing that he did not do was discuss his dreams with anybody else. Not his friends, not his family, and neither did he discuss them with any medical staff, nor even military people, nor even those others who were in authority over him officially. The more he dreamed, the more that he became convinced that he was vastly more important than any of the other beings with whom he lived within the society that he existed. In his dream, after about 3 months, there were added instances where initially he had just seen those rather white cobblestone curves that now, part of his dream, revealed how the cobblestones were made whiter than they might otherwise have been. All he was introduced to and his dream was the fact that the cobblestones had a rounded surface, which would be uppermost when placed in the road. He watched, with increasing fascination, the manner in which the surfaces of these curves were roughened, in order to provide a better grip on the sides, on the surfaces, for those wheels that were not just simply iron-shod. He saw how the cobbles were roughened. There were some hidden tools or instruments that he had seen in the dream, to which he had paid no attention up until this particular time. The process started out by scrubbing the surfaces, by using some sort of steel blade that was scraped across the curved surface of the stone, removing any foreign materials that adhered to its surface, then boiling the cobblestone. This was an unusual process for a cobblestone, But as the boiling took approximately 30 minutes, the colour of the surface changed from a sort of creamy grey to a rather nice bright white. This impressed him considerably. Consequently, he started to pay greater attention to the process of dealing with each raw cobblestone, still only viewed from the top, through and through to the finish, revealing a beautifully curved and roughened surface ready to be laid in the road. His curiosity was roused when he thought about the supply of these cobblestones and wondered where the source of these might have been. As mentioned a little earlier, each night as he had this recurring dream, it extended itself very slightly by adding new information, therefore providing a slightly fuller mental video as he dreamed. He hoped that he could unearth the source of these beautifully curved stones simply because he thought he could build other paved areas that could look beautiful because of the whitened aspect of these curved surfaces. He also wondered about being able to construct edifices using these cobblestones to provide a highly unusual finish on any vertical wall structure of those buildings.
Dictionary. Cobblestone, noun, another term for cobble. The cobblestones are still slippery with the previous night's rain, or as a modifier, cobblestone streets. Gradually, each evening that he experienced the slowly growing dream, he failed to realize that his physical strength had been ever so slowly waning. He was gradually becoming weaker, to the point that he found it difficult to achieve wakefulness, to be able to use his toilet or bathroom without quite a physical struggle to
leave his bed and walk the few feet to those 2 rooms. Fortunately, he had purchased a crate of water bottles, mainly because the tap water was extremely unpalatable, and he preferred the pristine bottled water, which placed next to his bed, as he often woke up with quite a thirst and required a few gulps of the sweet-tasting liquid. A further few nights of increasing weakness took him to the point where he was unable to move from his horizontal position on his bed. He was no longer able to eat or use his toilet facilities, and his dreaming took substantially longer slices of time out of each 24 hours. He began to understand that his original lack of acceptance of Pol Pot's reign of terror was, in fact, a reality, and not some figment of a number of people's imaginations, particularly those of Cambodia. He still had not equated the earlier part of his dream about the beautiful white, slightly domed, roughened surfaces of the cobblestones, which would be the foundations of a super long-lasting highway surface, and his existing predicament. His attention became almost more sharp as he experienced increasing sections of this unusual dream that was occupying his sleeping periods, almost like a documentary, receiving updates on a daily basis, providing slightly more information on the subject at hand. He was extremely weak after about 5 days without food, and also started smelling extremely putrid. But he had maintained his fluid level because of the water bottles that he had earlier purchased, and it was becoming increasingly more difficult to open each new bottle as he was becoming weaker and weaker, and ultimately had to resort to using his teeth in order to open the bottle top cap. Having digested all this information, he realized that he could not wake himself from his dream, nor could he bring himself round to consciousness. He was trapped inside his dream. Was it a dream? Or had his dream become a reality? All he could do was gradually come to the conclusion that there had been some incredibly dangerous skullduggery played upon his person. He really did believe that other people, perhaps the government itself, had poisoned his food or made his life more difficult so that he would be easily malleable, uncontrollable in their medical facilities, which were terrible places. He succumbed to the beckoning of his dream and failed to consume any more water, as he had become too weak to even hold a bottle. His mind was still highly active, in spite of the fact that his body was physically almost unusable. In his mind, he began to equate his dream with the predicament that he was in. He began to understand that the killing fields really did exist, and that there was some connection between the cobblestones and those people who were murdered by the Pol Pot regime. He showed the beautifully white, curved domes of each of the cobblestones. Then his view changed for the first time as the camera view tilted in a slow, vertical downward arc, revealing not his cherished domed cobblestones, only the shiny cranial domes of vast numbers of human skulls. Instantly, he felt a slight sharp pain at the base of his skull, which lasted only milliseconds and then was non-existent. He then watched how one of the tools that he had earlier seen, but paid no attention to, was used to roughen the surface of the skull, thereby rendering it as a non-slip surface. His last view was that of the placement of a white polished skull, positioned into the last remaining hole in the roadway of this vast army of skulls. His view suddenly switched from that of a bystander to look through the eye sockets of the skull as his camera view. He looked at the surface of the road while his own skull was being lowered into the last hole in the ground. As a final cobblestone would be lowered, his dream abruptly ceased, as there was no further brain activity. He had fulfilled his function at last, the most important and final cobblestone to complete the white road of his fantasy. The end.
Don't forget, read all of them as they come, and don't forget to subscribe and like, and let me know in the comments what you think. Bye.